G'day folks. Well, for this afternoon's little equipment autopsy and rebuild, I'm going to tear down the Ford Escape's power steering pump. It's a fairly standard looking pump. I'm pretty sure I've seen it on a number of different engines, and if this seal kit is anything to go by, it's definitely not a Ford pump. Well, it's probably a very generic pump. The kit that I've got is for a Nissan Bluebird, but the gaskets themselves look exactly the same as what's actually on the pump. I haven't yet taken it apart, but I'd be willing to bet they are closely, if not exactly, the same. And leaving the pump just sitting on its back like that is enough to cause an oil slick, so something tells me this metallised gasket with the rubber film on it has failed completely. Hopefully there's no cracks in the housing. I don't really have a way of testing that. I don't have non-destructive testing. So I can only imagine this bolt hole here isn't completely used. This part here doesn't get clamped. So I'm thinking it's blown about there. And the oil leaks out through the back. So yeah, the pump was completely wet and dripping when I pulled it out. There was no oil around the main bearing. So the internal seal hasn't failed. The seal should be back here. That hasn't failed yet, but I'll probably pull all that out and replace it if it's, as long as it's non-destructive to the bearing. I don't have a replacement bearing. I'll get everything apart from that. So yeah, should be alright. Let's see how we go. Okay, with the back housing off, just 4 bolts. Definitely a vane pump, and you can see the rubber surface on this gasket's not only cooked, but it's just completely flat. It's not doing anything. It's been leaking out around this hole at the very back. So that's all got to be replaced. And I've also got to try and remove the core assembly and do the front seal, even though the front seal is still fine. I'm in half a mind not to touch it, but I've got the seal kit, so I might as well. The outer housing moves. I just don't want to lose all of these things on the floor or anywhere like that. I don't want the vanes falling out, please. It's one of those little tear downs. But yeah, I've pretty much got everything else. Mind you, this is the leaking point, so I should just replace this and put it together, but who cares? We'll tempt fate and take the rest of it apart, because that's what we do here. We pull things to bits and sometimes put them back together again. Well, when you've come this far, you know, well, there's either no going back, or you can just put it back together the way you think it should go. Actually, I know which way it should go. The vanes have a rounded edge at the front and a flatter edge at the back inside the rotor, and they should all be the same in theory, but at least I can replace all these O-rings. Just got to pop the shaft out and do the seal and everything, and we should be quite happy. Very simple vane pump, nothing to it. Actually, it looks like one that I took off a Hyundai engine that I've got mounted on my turbocharger jet engine project. There's also an O-ring on there, which is that bigger one. There's a smaller one. It's one of those two. Yeah. There'll also be O-rings on these fittings here that I'll take off and replace. Yay! That's most of it anyway. I'll just pop that out, replace the main seal, lube up the bearing a bit, and then put it back together again and hope to God it doesn't explode. Well, it won't explode, it'll just make angry noises. It shouldn't make angry noises. Everything's going back together the right way. Okay, well the pump side should be happy now, hopefully. The gasket side, well, I can see where it failed. It's certainly that hole there, because the gasket doesn't line up with the hole. Neither of them do, not the new one, not the old one. So this rubber edge is literally right on the edge of that hole that goes to nowhere. So no wonder it's just bleeding fluid out there. It's just this tiny little rubber edge, half of that thickness, that's stopping all the good stuff from getting out. No wonder the bloody thing failed. I wonder if there's a way to actually tweak this here and here to actually push that up a little bit, but then There's still a gap between the rotor housing and the gasket itself. Almost. Nah, I literally can't go any closer. Maybe a tiny bit. But you can see where that hole is. No, sorry, the other hole. I was going to say that's the low pressure side. That has to have a seal on it. Yeah, it goes that way. That flange side's okay. That one there. This hole in the back plate is much bigger. Yeah, that's what it is. This hole's so big, it's only getting half the thickness of that gasket, and it's leaking straight out of there and then out the back. Okay, I know what it's doing now. This gasket should hold up just fine for a while anyway. I mean, the pump doesn't show any signs of being removed, so it should be alright. Give it a clean up, install new metal gasket, and it should be fine. And put the circlip back on the bearing side. Alright, well, that should do for now. I know the veins all went back in one direction. You can see where there's wear marks on them and then where there aren't, so I just made sure they all went back in the way they came out, just not in the same holes. So it should be pretty right. Not much else to say. Let's shove it back in the car and see what happens. Well, power steering pump's a lot happier now. I was a little bit worried because it was making horrible noises last night, but I did a bit of research, and that's what happens when you get air bubbles through the system. It starts cavitating and churning up foam, which is what it was doing. So I let it settle overnight and everything's fine, which is happy. Now I've got to move everything out of the way and put it back together again. Be good. Move all this shit. Nice and clean, no oil leaks. Very good. I'm running a warm-up cycle. I had the ECU disconnected. Part of a relearn cycle. I must say I like that tensioner setup. That belt tensioner is ridiculously easy to use. Very easy. And the belt routing's right there. So you can't go wrong even in the field. Very easy to work with. So yeah. Purring like a kitten. Even those spark plugs seem to have cleared themselves up, the ones that are all carbonised. Yep. Very good. That's one problem solved. Another major step towards a roadworthy certificate. I just have to find out about that little bullseye chip. Can't really see it, but yeah. There's a little chip right there. I don't know if that'll pass. A bit of a bugger. There might be a one chip limit. If that's the case, then it's alright, but if it's multiple chips, then the screen has to come out. Although it is fairly well sandblasted. Yeah, there's lots of tiny little chips all over it, so it might be time to just replace it anyway. Windscreens are cheap. Well, sort of cheap. They're a few $100s, but still. Nothing beats having a brand new screen like that one. That's still... Oh no, this isn't new, but blue screen's new. This one's a little bit pockmarked and sandblasted. But yeah, very good. I wish I could get that out. Some idiot scribbled on it with a bloody T or something. It's gone through the top coat. After a bit of a drive, I'll suck all the fluid out again and do another refill. Just purge out the remains of the old junk.